were you a missionary in Africa, or was it?
Yes. So we've served in Swaziland and Benin and Kenya.
Completely different cultures.
Right, and actually, that's an interesting fact is, people who travel around, Africans who travel in Africa will say, Africa's all the same, Africa's all, no, well, this is what they say, Africa's all the same, Africa's all different.
Yeah.
And they're meaning, there are certain things that you just find everywhere you go in Africa, but everywhere you go in Africa, it's always different.
That's extremely true. Yeah.
So, really, when you
okay, great. So it's just basic rundown. It's going to be about 5 minutes. It's just sort of a profile of our students who are graduating. So I'll ask you a couple of questions about like why you did your dissertation, your ministry, and then if I see you're going overboard, I like rambling. I ramble a lot, but because we only have 5 minutes, if I do this, it means wrap it up.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about it. So, well, first of all, congratulations, Paul, on achieving this PhD. I think it's an academic touchstone that many people fail to reach. And I just wanted to know, the first question would be, so there are plenty of tertiary institutions in America, very respected tertiary institutions in America. What was your motivation for wanting to study with SATs instead of studying with them, if there was any motivation?
Okay. First, let me say thank you. Happy to have made it by God's grace. One of my motivations when I was looking for an institution to study with, was I wanted to study with one that was based in Africa.
Right.
Because I've served as a missionary in Africa, and I wanted Africa influence into my dissertation and into my thinking. And I knew if I studied someplace else, an institution in Europe or the United States, I would not. It would likely I would not get that, but picking an institution in Africa gave me that. And then obviously when I started looking at places to study within Africa, South African Theological Seminary, SATs, rose very quickly to the top of the list.
Oh, great. It also makes sense because your dissertation is on contextualization of the New Testament and obviously spreading the gospel. So it would make sense if you went to an American institution, they wouldn't really understand what you were trying to do. So okay, that makes sense. I think at this point you are a missionary. Maybe you can give us a brief background on your ministry, how long you've been a missionary for, and what inspired you to become a missionary.
And so when I was in college, I saw a presentation on missions. And during that presentation, I just realized that most Christian workers were working with people who are already Christians. And that deeply impacted my life. And so after that, I told God, I'll go wherever you want me to go.
Dangerous.
And then I met my beautiful wife, who, when she was 6, she came home from a missions conference and told her parents that she wanted to be a missionary in Africa.
Wow.
And to which they responded very graciously, "Why don't you wait a few years?" Since college and with the influence of my wife, Africa has been very close and near to our heart. So we spent 2 years in Swaziland working with Transworld Radio, TWR. Then I did my master's, took a 4-year break, did my master's in the United States. Then went back to Benin, or Benin, if you say the correct French pronunciation. Spent 7.5 years there, and then we lived in Kenya for 3.5 years. Our work permits were not renewed, and so I now live in the United States and spend 4 months out of the year teaching in Kenya. When we were in Kenya, we transitioned from working with Transworld Radio to Africa Theological Seminary. So now I teach at Africa Theological Seminary in Kenya, not to be confused with South African Theological Seminary in South Africa.
Okay, that's great. So do you feel, because a lot of our students, this is my own personal experience, feel doing an academic degree, I'm sure you've met this in Africa, somehow corrupts the message. You know, the whole, I just need the Holy Spirit and nothing else. And they feel like getting a theological degree, even a PhD in your case, would somehow pollute how they propagate and spread the gospel. Do you feel the same way do you feel that getting a theological education enhanced your ability to be an effective minister of the gospel, or do you feel it there's no difference?
That's really a great question. Some people, when they study theology, it ruins them because knowledge puffs people up. Mm-hmm. And if you become focused on gaining knowledge, you lose something, because ultimately Christianity is about God's Spirit doing something supernatural in people's hearts. Uh-huh. As you also pointed out, you can't just say, "Oh, we're just gonna, trust the Spirit." There is a sense that, I shouldn't say there is a sense. The church needs its academics. The church needs people who are thinking at the highest levels critically about the faith, and in my case, about how culture impacts how we see the Bible, which is a critical issue to think about. And so you need this blending of the academics with the spiritual, and you don't want to strip one from the other.
That's a great answer. Yeah, I agree as well. Maybe final question would be, your leading from that, your experience getting your PhD, with SATs in particular, can you sort of very briefly explain or how it went? Was it to your expectations, or do you regret going to SATs? I know that's a bit of a leading question, but it's just sort of from what you've said, which is a great answer, which is you need to balance the academic and spirituality. Right. What was your experience at SATs like?
So one of the things that I did, which is probably not a thing that all SATs students do, is I went and spent some time with my advisor. I had the opportunity to go and spend time with Dr. Domris. Oh. And for me, that was very transformational and he was gracious enough to let me follow him around, as he did some Bible studies and as he ministered at church, and also as he interfaced with non-believers. So I say I followed him around like a little puppy. And he helped me in part of this, seeing that you can mesh this academic and real life and spiritual, that they can go together. So that was a key part of my experience here at SATS. More specifically, probably to your question and the experience of many SATS students, there were times when I regretted the decision to pursue a PhD. Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely times in that process where I wanted to quit, because it's not an easy process. But I'm very thankful that I stuck the process out. I'm very thankful that SATS forced me to think more critically, to dig deeper, to question and to search for answers, and to hopefully be better prepared to minister to the church.
Great. Unfortunately, I would love to ask you a bazillion questions. As I said, your thesis was very interesting, but that's all the questions we can ask you at this particular moment. But thank you very, very much for agreeing to participate, and congratulations on your PhD. As you said, it's definitely a battle. I would say that.
Right.
So thank you very much for.
Oh,
your
you're
time.
welcome. Thank you.